In the heart of a small, forgotten town, Hope Haven, a modest nursing home, was slowly fading away. Its hallways echoed with hesitant footsteps, while the damp walls whispered stories of neglect. The recent arrival of the luxurious Starlight Manor, offering comfort and exclusivity, had turned Hope Haven into a shadow of its former self. The residents who could afford it had already left, leaving behind those with nowhere else to go. The remaining staff worked mechanically, tending only to those who could still pay. But Clara was different. The young caregiver treated everyone equally, ignoring the sarcastic remarks and judgmental looks from her colleagues. To her, caring for lives wasn't about money, it was a calling. Among the residents, Mrs. Amelia stood out. A woman whose face bore the marks of time, her somber gaze and nearly oppressive silence set her apart. Some said she had once been a vibrant person before she lost everything. Now, she lived in the most isolated corner of the home, always watching but rarely speaking. What Clara didn't know was that Amelia harbored a secret, one that could change the fate of everyone at Hope Haven. Clara found Mrs. Amelia in her usual spot, sitting by a window overlooking the neglected garden. Her snow-white hair was tied in a loose bun, and her eyes, fixed on a faraway point, seemed to see something beyond the present. "Good morning, Mrs. Amelia," Clara said softly, adjusting the blanket over the woman's lap. Amelia didn't respond. Clara had grown used to the silence, but she never gave up. She sat beside her, letting the quiet moment fill the space between them. After a long pause, Amelia finally murmured, her voice barely audible. "Have you ever felt trapped?" Clara turned to her, surprised. Amelia rarely spoke, and even less often asked personal questions. "I think we all feel that way sometimes," Clara replied, choosing her words carefully. Amelia's heavy gaze shifted to her, carrying something Clara couldn't quite pinpoint. "I've been trapped by something my whole life. And yet, I can't seem to let it go." Clara wanted to ask more, but Amelia turned back to the window, cutting off the conversation as abruptly as she had started it. Days passed since that cryptic conversation, and Clara couldn't shake Amelia's words from her mind. Then, one afternoon, as she entered Amelia's room, the mystery began to unfold. "Clara," Amelia began, her voice hesitant but filled with urgency. "You're the only one here I can trust." A chill ran down Clara's spine. It wasn't like Amelia to speak so directly. "What's wrong, Mrs. Amelia?" Amelia drew a deep breath, as if gathering strength to speak of something that had haunted her for decades. "My father left me something. Something valuable. He said it should only be used in a dire emergency, something that could save lives. But I've never had the courage to use it, until now." The seriousness in Amelia's eyes sent shivers down Clara's arms. "What is it?" "A diamond. A diamond worth more than you can imagine. It's hidden, Claire. But I can't get to it alone." The silence that followed was deafening. Clara's mind raced to process the revelation. The story sounded almost fantastical, but there was something in Amelia's gaze, something undeniably real. Amelia slowly opened an old, worn box from her nightstand. Inside was a faded photograph of a man standing beside a stone bridge surrounded by greenery. "It's here," Amelia said, pointing to the bridge in the photo. "My father hid the diamond in a secret compartment in the structure. No one else knows about it." Clara looked at the photo and then at Amelia. Skepticism clouded her thoughts, but beneath it was an undeniable urge to help. "I promise I'll do everything I can to find it, Mrs. Amelia." Amelia grasped Clara's hand with surprising strength. "You don't understand, Clara. This isn't for me. It's for all of them." Clara knew she couldn't do it alone. She sought out Sam, a retired groundskeeper who always seemed willing to lend a hand. After hearing the story, he gave a low whistle. "A hidden diamond? Sounds like something out of a movie," he said, though his tone carried a hint of intrigue. Despite his casual words, Sam packed his flashlight and tools. "If you trust her, Clara, I trust you. Let's go find it." When they arrived at the bridge Amelia had described, Clara froze, awestruck by the sheer presence of the aging structure. The old stone bridge was covered in moss, its arches standing against the passage of time, though barely. "We'd better move fast. This thing looks like it might come down any minute," Sam muttered. With trembling hands, Clara began searching for the compartment. Each passing second felt like an eternity. After nearly an hour of meticulous searching, Clara's fingers brushed against something unusual. One of the stones on the side of the bridge felt loose, out of place. "I think I found something," Clara exclaimed, trying to steady her shaking hands. Sam hurried over. "Let me see." With a combined effort, they dislodged the stone, revealing a small, dark cavity. Inside, wrapped in layers of fabric worn thin by time, was the object Amelia had described. Clara unwrapped it carefully, and there it was, a diamond of astonishing size, its facets gleaming even in the dim light of their flashlight. For a moment, neither of them spoke. "It's real," Clara whispered, her voice breaking. Sam shook his head in amazement. "That thing's worth a fortune. But we've got to be careful." Clara held the diamond close to her chest, feeling its weight, not just its physical heft but the responsibility it carried. She knew it could save Hope Haven, but it came with a cost. Back at the nursing home, Clara went straight to Amelia's room. The elderly woman sat upright, almost as if she had been waiting for them. When Clara entered with the bundle, Amelia's tired eyes lit up in a way Clara had never seen before. "You found it, didn't you?" Amelia asked, her voice trembling with emotion. Clara nodded and placed the diamond in Amelia's hands. For a long moment, Amelia just stared at it, as though reliving memories locked away for decades. "My father said this was our hope," Amelia murmured. "And now it's yours, Clara. I trusted you because I knew you'd do the right thing." Tears threatened to spill from Clara's eyes, but she held them back. "I promise I won't let you down, Mrs. Amelia. I'll make it count, for you and for everyone here." In the days that followed, Clara began planning the sale of the diamond. She knew she had to find someone trustworthy and far removed from the prying eyes of the town. The task was daunting, and anxiety clung to her every thought. After much searching, she managed to arrange a meeting with a reputable jeweler in a neighboring city. Sam insisted on accompanying her. "We can't afford for something to go wrong. You need backup," he said firmly. The jeweler's shop was an understated but elegant place, lined with glass cases showcasing rare and exquisite pieces. Clara and Sam waited nervously as the jeweler examined the diamond under a bright lamp, his face unreadable. "This is extraordinary," the jeweler finally said, carefully placing the diamond back on the table. He named a price that made Clara's heart race. It was enough, not just to save Hope Haven, but to start anew. As she clutched the check in her trembling hands, a mix of relief and fear washed over her. She understood that this money was more than a blessing. It was a monumental responsibility. Clara wasted no time. With the funds secured, she began planning a new home for the residents of Hope Haven. She decided not to salvage the crumbling old building. It was time for a fresh start. She purchased a plot of land on the outskirts of town, far from the shadow of Starlight Manor. Clara hired a local architect to design a warm and functional space with cozy rooms, accessible bathrooms, and welcoming communal areas filled with natural light. But first, Clara had to address the staff at Hope Haven. She called a meeting with the remaining employees. "I know this is a big change," Clara began, her voice steady but firm. "But I need to be clear. The new home will only work if everyone here is committed to treating every resident with dignity. If that's not something you can stand behind, this is your chance to leave." To her surprise, many of the staff supported her vision. but nearly half resigned that same day. "We'll do it with the team we have left," Clara said to Sam later. "It's not about the numbers, it's about the heart." As the construction of the new home progressed, Clara noticed that Amelia was growing weaker. The elderly woman spent more and more time in bed, her breathing heavy and labored. Clara made sure to visit her daily, sharing updates on the progress in hopes of lifting her spirits. "We're building a garden, Amelia," Clara said one evening, brushing the older woman's hair. "You'll love it. I'm planting flowers that remind me of the ones outside your window." Amelia smiled faintly, though her strength seemed to be slipping away. "You're doing something wonderful, Clara," she whispered. "Don't stop." Clara tried to ignore the lump in her throat, but deep down, she knew Amelia didn't have much time left. As the new home began to take shape, Clara faced a new challenge. A local development company claimed prior interest in the land she had purchased and threatened to file a lawsuit to halt construction. The stress was overwhelming, but Clara refused to back down. She attended every meeting at the town hall, armed with contracts and documents proving her ownership. Sam, ever her loyal supporter, stood by her side through every confrontation. After weeks of tense negotiations, Clara triumphed. The developers withdrew their claim, and construction resumed without further interruptions. Amelia listened to the story quietly, a small, proud smile on her face. "I knew you were strong, Clara," she said softly. "My father would have admired your determination." The new home, which Clara decided to name Tomorrow's Haven, began to take on a life of its own. The building's frame rose steadily, and Clara poured her energy into every detail. She worked closely with the architect, choosing calming colors for the walls and designing inviting spaces where residents could gather and feel at ease. Clara also made it a point to involve the residents in the planning process. She asked them what they wanted, details ranging from the layout of their rooms to the chairs in the dining hall. Seeing their excitement gave Clara renewed motivation. But while Tomorrow's Haven thrived in its construction phase, Amelia's health declined. Though she still listened attentively to Clara's updates, her presence seemed to grow fainter with each passing day. As the opening of Tomorrow's Haven drew near, Clara felt the pressure mounting. The deadline for Hope Haven's closure loomed, and every delay felt like a potential catastrophe. She worked late nights, often skipping meals, driven by an unrelenting sense of urgency. "You can't keep pushing yourself like this," Sam told her one evening, finding her hunched over blueprints under dim light. "I don't have a choice," Clara replied, her voice tinged with exhaustion. That night, Amelia called Clara into her room. "You're carrying too much, Clara," she said, her voice weak but steady. "But I know you'll make it." The quiet confidence in Amelia's words brought tears to Clara's eyes. She squeezed Amelia's hand, unable to find the words to respond. 2 days before the grand opening of Tomorrow's Haven, Amelia passed away. Clara found her early in the morning, lying peacefully in her bed, her face serene. A faint smile lingered on her lips, as if she had been ready for this moment. Though Clara had prepared herself, the loss hit her hard. As she looked around the empty room, her eyes fell on something on Amelia's nightstand. The photograph of the bridge, alongside a handwritten note. "I've done my part. Now it's your turn. Make this a home for everyone." Clara pressed the note against her chest, tears streaming down her face. Amelia was gone, but her spirit remained. The day of the grand opening was a bittersweet milestone. The residents of Hope Haven were transported to the new building, many seeing it for the first time. Their reactions were immediate. Smiles lit up tired faces, and tears of joy filled the eyes of those who had long forgotten what hope felt like. Clara watched as they explored the bright hallways, settled into their new rooms, and gathered in the communal spaces. The garden, filled with blooming flowers, became a central point of laughter and conversation. Sam stood beside Clara, resting a hand on her shoulder. "She'd be proud of you," he said softly. "This is everything she wanted." Clara nodded, gripping Amelia's note in her pocket. "I hope so," she whispered, watching the dream they had built come to life. One quiet evening, Clara sat alone in the garden of Tomorrow's Haven, gazing at the stars. The crisp night air carried with it a sense of peace and fulfillment. In her hands was Amelia's note, now creased and worn from being read so many times. She reread the words one last time, their meaning as powerful as the first day she saw them. "I've done my part. Now it's your turn." Clara felt a pang of loss but also an overwhelming sense of pride. Tomorrow's Haven was alive, a home filled with laughter and love. What had once been a place of despair and uncertainty was now a sanctuary, thanks to Amelia's sacrifice and the dedication of so many. The diamond that had changed everything was gone, but its brilliance remained. Not as a gemstone, but as a testament to what courage, love, and selflessness could achieve. Clara looked up at the stars and smiled. In her heart, she knew Amelia was watching, proud of what they had accomplished together.